just so as it was in keeping with all the other. Okay. I'm not sure where they're proposing to hang it. There's not much room in the reception.
No, I know.
Prime spot you pinched for that guy that gave us the
I
medals.
did, with all the things for the
Order of Australia.
That's right, orders.
In a design of a couple of different options.
Go for at the front. Well, we've got them all on board now.
To do that?
Yeah.
I'll give it a go.
Oh, he drew.
Oh, okay. Didn't cost him for
I think we got consent in there.
Have we asked them?
Ask Petition now.
I think Todd's got a couple of mock-ups to come in and show you all to see.
Councillors, can I have your attention please? I welcome you to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council and declare the meeting open. And I thank the gallery for their attendance this evening. Please note this meeting is being webcast live over the internet on Council's website. We start with a prayer, and I have that in the capable hands of Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We note there are apologies this evening of 3 councillors, Councillor Carol Ryan, Councillor Jodie Owen and Councillor Colin Ross. Minutes of a previous meeting. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the meeting as listed? Councillor Brown, the mover. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wilmot. All those in favour? Carried. Declarations of interest. Councillors, any declaration of interest this evening? Thank you. Ordinary business. The Council conducts its meetings according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening and that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The item withdrawn for discussion this evening, item 1, the amendment C242, protecting and preserving the heritage places and precincts in Pakenham, withdrawn by Councillor Michael Schilling. Councillor Schilling, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I'd like to withdraw item planning scheme amendment C242, protecting and preserving heritage places and precincts in Pakenham, and the recommendation that Council receive and consider all submissions received during the exhibition of planning scheme amendment C242, and 2, in accordance with section 23 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, refer all submissions for consideration to an independent planning panel to be appointed by the Minister for Planning.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Can I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Wilmot. Move to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is basically to receive and consider all submissions during the exhibition period of the Planning Scheme Amendment C242 in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act, as I mentioned in the report recommendations. This amendment is important and it's required to implement the recommendations of the Pakenham Structure Plan Heritage Review July 2018. Basically, the overall aim of this amendment is to ensure that we preserve 3 precincts within the Pakenham Activity Centre. So once Pakenham Structure Plan is implemented, we can preserve some of our town's history. This is important, particularly when you recognise some of Cardinia's historical past and ensuring that during a rapid period of development, which we will be expecting during the implementation of that Pakenham Structure Plan, that we don't lose track of our own identity and our past. These overlays are proposed for 3 distinct precincts, known as the St James Village Precinct, Henry Street Precinct and James Street Precinct. The specific house numbers are listed in the report, so I won't go through them all individually. I'd like to thank those residents who took the time to submit a submission. Some residents supported the proposal, some sought some clarification, and some remained opposed to the proposal. Some of the main themes highlighted include people voicing concerns over resale value of the properties if there was to be a heritage overlay, restricting the diversity of housing, diminishing ability to redevelop, and the fact that some homes shouldn't fit into the criteria or have reached their end of lifespan. There has been a little bit of a misconception around that you can't develop on heritage sites, but there are definitely avenues for people to improve the amenity of their properties and to develop, but it would require some more consultation with Council. These concerns have been noted by Council and now will be heard by an independent panel. The planning panel is one of the very early stages in this amendment process, meaning this amendment will come back to Council with the panel's comments, but also, importantly, recommendations. I am glad that we are at this early stage because I will be supporting the amendment going to that panel, but I do have some concerns about some of the houses listed as part of this amendment. Houses which were built pre-war and just post-war, to me, are 100% significant to the future of that activity centre, and I want to see them kept. However, I do question some of the brown brick veneer houses listed. I'm not convinced that brick veneer houses are part of have a heritage overlay over them. A lot of them were built in the 1980s, so look, these are things that I would happy to see what the panel do recommend on that, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they have some different thoughts over some of these properties. But once again, I'll wait and see what the outcome is of that. I'd like to thank all the officers for the hard work which they've put into this project. It's very important that when you put a structure plan in place, there's also provision to protect some of our most prized homes within the area. It's important that we're able to tell through generations the story of our local towns. So once again, I'll be supporting this tonight to go to an independent panel, but I will need to be further convinced that all the properties are appropriate for heritage listing, but we will see that through the report. So all I'm asking tonight is that councillors support that these submissions do go to an independent planning panel, and we await the report of that panel. Thank you.
Well presented, Councillor Shilling. Second, Councillor Wilmot to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Shilling. I'm happy to support you in this recommendation tonight, and I share some of your concerns about some of the properties that are listed. In fact, when I spent an afternoon driving around looking at all these properties, and there are definitely a couple there that were either late 70s, early 80s build, and I'm not sure what the significance is there. But I spent a little bit of time over the weekend looking at the document that underpins the heritage guidelines, the Bura Charter. And it's actually a very interesting document, and I wish I had more time to read it because, and perhaps I'll go back and do that, because it's really interesting the way they classify things and the values that they grade things on. So it was really quite a good piece of documentation to have a bit of a look through to get a better understanding. And I'm sure that the group that has done this assessment have used that and done the job right. And I'm certainly no expert in heritage buildings or anything else, but I think it's now important that it does go to the panel. There's been a lot of submissions made about this proposal, so to go to a panel now and have their expert advice applied to those submissions will be a very valuable thing for us. It is only the third step in this. Once the panel has heard the submissions, they'll then make a report that will be presented to council, and then we'll have the opportunity to take on board their recommendations or consider their recommendations, implement what we think is appropriate, and then of course it'll be up to the Minister to sign off, and he'll look at both the recommendations of the panel and what council puts forward at the final result. So it's got a few steps to go yet, but I note that this panel is listed to be the 4th of February next year. So I might even come down and listen to parts of that because I think it'll be a very interesting thing. I'm quite interested to hear and see how we can preserve our history and our heritage. Too often we pull things down without considering our heritage, and I guess that's probably the reason that I'm sitting where I am today, that that has been tried once before and I stood up and fought for the history and the heritage. So I want to have a little bit more of a clearer picture of the significance of some of these houses. So I look forward to hearing the panel's assessments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Well supported statements. Are there any other speakers for this item, for or against? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the previous councillors who spoke. I support this going to a panel. I just want to acknowledge some of the submitters. Obviously, there is some challenges. If you do have a heritage overlay attached to your property, there is some challenges, and that was reflected in the submissions. And I note the Victorian branch of the Return Services League had a submission. They raised concerns. I note that the Pakenham Berwick Historical Society also put a submission in. So I also thank those people, and also obviously the many owners that put a submission in. I think it's really important. We don't have much history left in Pakenham. It's slowly dissolving, I suppose, and it's really, really important to protect what we've got. I note some of the comments made by previous councillors. That will be obviously flushed out through this panel, but I also want to thank the officers. We've spent a lot of time discussing this, and I look forward to the panel so we can get some clear direction, but I note that it is really important that we try to preserve the limited history that we've got left here in Pakenham, and this is one way we can do that. So I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other speakers, for or against? Other speakers? Can I ask Councillor Shilling to sum up, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wilmot, Councillor Owen as well for your comments. And look, I support them 100%. It is important that we preserve our history, and this panel report will just further inform us as to what the most appropriate course of action is, and then it will be up to Council's discretion whether we continue on with the recommendation, adopt changes recommended by the panel, and we'll be able to look forward to the future. I would encourage residents still, if you do have concerns or questions. I mean, I've been speaking to local residents as late as this afternoon over concerns that people are having with this. By all means, call one of your Central Ward councillors. I only say that because it's located within Central Ward. And look, I know council officers are more than happy to give residents clarification and help out if need be. But once again, I do support this going to panel, and I definitely look forward to the report which comes out from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shilling. We'll vote in the usual manner. All those for? Carried. Item 2, Planning Scheme Amendment C228, Pakenham Structure Plan and Urban Design Framework Update. Also withdrawn by Councillor Michael Shilling. Thank you, Councillor Shilling.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move the recommendation of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shilling. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wilmot. Move to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. So the report is to seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare and exhibit Planning Scheme Amendment C228 to the Cardinia Planning Scheme, and resolve to adopt the updated draft Pakenham Structure Plan 2018 and the draft Activity Centre Urban Design Framework 2018. Tonight really is the night for Central Pakenham. We speak a lot about building new facilities across the Shire, and of course we're going to be doing that because it's a growing municipality, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the country, so of course we are. But we also have Central Pakenham, which has a proud history with our local community, and it's probably one of the key hubs, I guess, in Pakenham and maybe even more broadly in the Cardinia Shire, where people have true access to good quality public transport. It's in a hub of services. So I'm really happy tonight that we can bring so many reports to Council for adoption and to progress reports, because look, it's incredibly important that we're advocating for Central Pakenham and the future of Central Pakenham as well. So as a council, we've been talking about this Pakenham structure plan for some time. There have been several amendments to this document, and it seems to, it definitely does seem to come up from time to time as we do look at new amendments and better ways of doing things. And it was first adopted back in 2015, so the previous council, and was incorporated into the Cardinia Planning Scheme through Amendment C211. This amendment relates directly to the Pakenham Activity Centre, so not the whole suburb of Pakenham, but the Activity Centre, which basically incorporates the main street of Pakenham and its surrounds, which includes the old racecourse site, down near Racecourse Road, and also McGregor Road. And the real purpose of the structure plan is to provide a vision for our town centre and provide developers, I guess, with a blueprint for future development of the town centre. It's important moving forward with modern day principles that development takes place in a way that promotes livability and quality town planning. And I believe when you look at this document, the structure plan does just that. And whilst tonight I'm asking councillors to basically support a tidy up amendment and to ensure the structure plan is current, succinct and relevant and implements the panel's recommendations, which does include the future of Burke Park, which I'll discuss a little bit later. But I'm also seeking support for the adoption of the draft Pakenham Town Centre Urban Framework. Initially, that piece of work was adopted in 2014, and the town centre has experienced some significant development since then. Therefore, this framework has needed some updating. And the document covers guidance on preferred built form and design outcomes for our town centre. And that includes core retail areas, the public realm, streetscapes and gateways. And I can't stress the importance of this document and the importance of people having a say moving forward, because it will set the future appearance for our beloved activity centre. We often get feedback that Pakenham Main Street needs a refresh, and in a lot of ways I do agree. Our town centre, you drive through it at 5 o'clock at night, and quite often you can be the only person that's driving through there, and that's something that does need to change. We need to preserve that and amenity and vibrancy of the activity centre. These are exciting times, I believe, for Central Pakenham, but one thing we must ensure is that we don't rush this development and ensure that appropriate frameworks are in place which guide the highly innovative and cohesive design principles. As after all, I guess as a community, we want our town centre to be a bustling hub of activity and culture. And by working with the Pakenham Structure Plan and the Urban Design Framework into the future, that's how we're going to go about achieving this. And the community now will have the opportunity to have a say in the future of this plan, and I recommend anyone that's interested in the future of our activity centre to do just that, have their say, because look, these documents, they're not something that will be happening tomorrow. You won't all of a sudden start seeing cranes in the main street. That won't be happening, but it is something that we want to see implemented over the next 20-year period. So, look, I'll leave it now for my seconder to speak, and I hope councillors will support these amendments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shilling. Your enthusiasm on this item has been noted. Seconder to speak, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't actually prepare anything to speak on for this, because I thought there'd be other Central Ward councillors here that would be more than happy to speak. But I am happy to support this. I think we're at the very beginning of this process, so we're at stage 1 of a 5-stage process. So this is seeking permission, I guess, from the Minister, authorisation rather is probably the better word, from the Minister to put this document out on public exhibition for a period of time. So as soon as we get that authorisation, and I won't be next week or this week because we're in the middle of an election, so as soon as the Minister and everything's settled, I'm sure he'll give his authorisation for us to go out to the public. So I would imagine that'll be early in the new year, and that's the opportunity then for the public to have their say, and I certainly hope that the residents within this area and anybody that really uses the Pakenham Town Centre has a look at the document and puts forward their thoughts and suggestions, and particularly the businesses that are currently in that area. I think it's very important that they know what's in this plan and they support it, and this is their opportunity to have their say. So I really encourage anybody who is in that area or uses that area or works in that area to have a good look at the documentation. It's been reduced down to a much smaller document than what it was, which will make it a lot easier for the public to read and absorb that information as well. And reducing it from 142 pages to 40 pages makes it a lot easier to read and a lot quicker to read and understand as well. So that hopefully will assist the public when they're looking at it and trying to come to terms. But I'm sure that if they've got questions about it, I'm sure the staff would be more than happy to help them get a better understanding of what the document's all about during that exhibition period. So I'll look forward to hearing their submissions and progressing this through the next few stages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Well spoken with someone that wasn't prepared to speak. Did very exceptionally well. Are there any other speakers either for or against this item? No, I'll call on the mover to sum up. Councillor Shilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wilmot, too, for seconding that on such short notice as well. So the focus, I did promise to update people on Burke Park. So Burke Park was a bit of contention where the panel have recommended, made a recommendation which we will be seeking to adopt, and that was the panel wanted council to resolve with VicTrack the future of Burke Park. So we've decided to not purchase that land. We see Burke Park and the Pakenham railway area as being a key public transport hub into the future. So therefore, we won't be seeing that in the updated plan. These two documents really focus on Main Street being the heart of an activity centre with shared integrated space, which has a strong emphasis on being pedestrian friendly, where traffic will move in harmony, and we'll also see commercial and mixed use form where residential and retail will coexist. There's also exciting proposals for the entrance to the Main Street, which residents will find on page 48 of that urban plan, which will have more trees, extensive decking that provides a crossing of the creek and forefront to the old Shire building. I would just like to put out, I guess, a little bit of a message to the community and I guess to future and emerging leaders across the Shire. This plan requires bold vision, and it requires people who are passionate leaders in our community to bring such a plan to fruition. I don't want to see this plan shelved and in 20 years' time we look back and say, hey, missed opportunity. I want people to be passionate about this and really put forward their passion and their vision for the Main Street. I have this vision myself of what it could be, and I say straight away that this probably isn't, this isn't the position of council. This is me as an individual councillor, how I see that happening. We have Pakenham East going ahead. We potentially, within the next 20 years, there's quite a good possibility that there'll be parts of Nanagoon, particularly around the base of the freeway, which will be developed. When people talk about going out for a night or going out to a quality restaurant, I want it to be the default that we'll just go down to Pakenham Main Street, because I want it to be that hub of experience, that hub of culture that people can go down, celebrate and enjoy. And I'd love to see in the next 20 to 30 years, if we can do our planning right, as you enter the Main Street, we have an attractive visual entrance to our Main Street. As we go down, we have high density style living, and we know that street, the Main Street, can support high density living. It's within walking distance to public transport. It's within walking distance to quality healthcare services. It's within walking distance to a health hub, potentially future community hospital. There is no reason why this activity centre couldn't be transformed into something simply amazing, which our local community are proud of and will use. My vision as you go down that Main Street, you potentially could have high density apartment style living in the next 20 to 30 years, 100%. Personally, we know in the plan that Pakenham Main Street is proposed to be a one-way street. I cannot wait to see the alfresco dining take place, those footpaths to be widened out, so you can actually have people using that facility for hospitality, for other supportive businesses as well. Look, there's a lot up around the Pakenham train station, and we don't know whether we're going to end up with a sky rail or an underground. I don't know. If we do end up with a sky rail, that gives us opportunity to have public space underneath that, where we could have things like farmers markets back into Pakenham again. So I think it's important that we do have a strong vision for that Main Street and to be bold. And that council, we encourage development within that area, working with developers, working with the community to make it a great place to live and a great place to enjoy. So, look, I'm looking for council's recommendation tonight to send this to the minister, and I look forward to the next 20 to 30 years to see what comes of it. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Schilling. Okay, all those in favour? For? Carried. Item number 3. Appointment of the new committee member to the Nobilius Heritage Park and Emerald Museum Committee of Management, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following: that Mandy Porter be appointed to the Nobilius Heritage Park and Emerald Museum Committee of the Management for the remainder of the current term.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I think I dragged you into that, sorry. Can I have a seconder for this item, please? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Mover to speak, Councillor Owen.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my ward colleague for seconding. The Nobelius Heritage Park and Emerald Museum Committee of Management recently appointed a newly elected member. This brings the elected committee to a total of 10. Back in August, though, previous committee members Leon Mikowski and June Styling tendered their resignations. And at September 2018 council meeting, Lynn Scroll was appointed to the committee. So we welcome the new member, Mandy Porter, to this committee. It's a great committee, passionate group of volunteers that run this fantastic museum and heritage park. I want to thank the outgoing members. I particularly know June Styling. She has a long history of volunteering at this museum. So I thank June and also Leon for their amazing contribution. Thank you. So I move this recommendation and we welcome Mandy to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Seconded to speak, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sir Councillor Owen. Just a couple of quick words. The Nobelius Heritage Museum and Park and the committee that manages that place, they do a fantastic job. It's got some long history in Emerald, and pretty much established Emerald way back at the turn of the last century. Now that we're past the next one, it's just happened 20 years ago, but such a great effort they do to preserve that heritage and that history of Emerald. So I congratulate the appointment of Mandy and look forward to many more years of great work to come from them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Well said. Any other councillors to speak? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to thank the outgoing members of this committee, Leon and June. I know I've been down to the museum a number of times and had conversations with June, and June was born and raised in Emerald, so has this incredible wealth of history and knowledge, and the stories she can tell you about how the community has developed over the years is just priceless. So it's really lovely that the people with that sort of knowledge have been involved, and June's been there for a very long time, so I really thank her for A, being part of the committee, but B, all the conversations over the years. But welcome to Mandy. I think it's great that we've got some new people stepping forward and coming onto these committees. It's often a struggle to get people involved in these committees, so I thank Mandy for putting up her hand, and I hope she enjoys her time on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Any other speakers? Move it to sum up. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my ward councillors. I just encourage all residents and visitors to our Shire to visit the Nobelius Park and also the Emerald Museum. The museum's open every Wednesday and Sunday. So if you haven't been there, go there. It's a fantastic asset. And I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. So I will signify by voting in this usual manner. All those for? The item is carried. I'll make a note before we move to the next item as Councillor Brown is not feeling very well at the moment. He stepped out of the chamber for a moment, so we're fortunate. Our councillors are dropping like flies. We got 5 here, so still got a quorum with 5. So one more out and we're all going home early. So just make a note of that. Please just hang in there. It is quite warm in here, and it doesn't make it easy. I think the councillors who would like to remove their jackets, I think, may do so, if you prefer, and staff. That's all right if you want. I think I might remove mine as well. Let's do a big removal. Realising we have the cameras on us at the moment, so we've got to remain as upright as we can. Okay, let's move on. We'll move on to item 4. Lease Community College Gippsland Limited, 6D Henry Street, Pakenham. Withdrawn also by Councillor Michael Schilling. Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I'd like to move the recommendation that Council commences a statutory process under sections 190 and 223 of the Local Government Act by giving public notice in the local paper circulating in the areas of Pakenham, advising of the proposal to lease 6D Henry Street to Community College Gippsland. In the event of submissions being received, a committee comprising of ward councillors be appointed by the Chief Executive Officer and set the day, time, place for the hearings of such submissions. And following the consideration of submissions, the matter be reported to Council to consider a proposal to lease 6D Henry Street, Pakenham.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Can I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Schilling to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a great outcome for a much-loved community facility, and the facility we're talking about is the former Lions Den, which sits next to Living and Learning in Pakenham, which was a bistro-style facility up until only a few years back. Initially, Council had earmarked this facility for demolition, and it's after councillors went on a tour there a few months back. It may have actually been about 18 months back now, actually. I questioned this facility's viability to be offered as a training centre for a local training provider. And I'm very, very excited to see that Community College Gippsland have expressed their interest in not only operating out of the facility, but also contributing to the renovation of the existing building. A strong local vocational training network is essential in ensuring capacity is built into our community. Vocational training also empowers its students and often provides work-ready graduates equipped to enter the workforce. This alone satisfies multiple elements of both our livability and council plan. The location is important when determining the location of any training facility, especially for any training facility which is targeted at either people who are leaving high school early or people who are deemed at risk. And that is because you want training to be accessible to public transport and local amenities. There's no use opening up a vocational training facility in the middle of the desert. This location here, where the old Lions Den site is perfect, because not only is it a short walking distance to public transport, but it also abuts Living and Learning, which is another training hub. It's also close to open space and essential services. So to me, it ticks all of the boxes. We've been talking about the need for additional training within the Shire, and this seems like a fantastic opportunity that, as a council, we should be incredibly proud of. Under this proposal, Community College Gippsland would provide $300,000, and council would match that with another $300,000 to upgrade the current building. In terms of some of the lease agreements, Community College Gippsland would pay council $1 each year for 10 years, with the rent after that being $43,000 per year. Once again, the community will have the opportunity to make submissions, and as I mentioned in my opening remark, that if we do receive submissions, ward councillors will hear these submissions. Look, this is a fantastic news story for Pakenham, for Central Pakenham, and fulfills every criteria needed to help our local residents thrive in a positive learning environment. And I'd like to thank Community College Gippsland for investing in our local community and providing those skills to enable our residents to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Councillor Wilmot, seconder, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. And you've covered off pretty well everything that's in this report, and I do agree with you. It is a good news story to any time that we can increase the educational opportunities for our young people, it's a good thing. And this is a great location, and to think that this is a building that we're potentially going to pull down and now we're going to repurpose it for such a great outcome is a really invaluable step forward. So I thank you for putting forward the idea of using this building for an educational facility. But it is a good outcome that we've have to work through this process, and the Gippsland College have outgrown their current premises, so how great that we can move them forward into this new premises and give them more room to expand their services. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it all happen. But as per everything that we do, it will go to public consultation first. So the public do have an opportunity to make submissions if they've got thoughts on this. It is their time to do it. Then the ward councillors will have an opportunity to hear those submissions, and the decision will be made after that period has finished. But I'm looking forward to this going ahead. I'm hoping that everybody will be on board with this and there won't be any issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Any other speakers? Any other councillors would like to speak? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, previous councillors who spoke. I support this this item. I recently spoke to one of the high officers at the college, and he expressed his absolute appreciation of what council is doing in relation to this space, in relation to educating those young people in need. And I also want to acknowledge that over the last 12, 18 months, we've had many correspondence by other groups that wanted to use this facility. I know that Probus clubs, I know the Art Society, and other interested groups really wanted that building. And it's really hard for council to say, look, sorry, but this is the direction we're going. But we acknowledge the other groups and their needs. But I think if you explain the story, what this will be, I think every fair and reasonable person will think this is the right outcome. If they've still got accommodation requirements, I encourage them to come back to council so we can work through their needs. But I think when you look at this proposed outcome, I think that is a really good one. Can I just ask the question to the relevant General Manager? I might have missed it, but what's proposed for the current site on Princess Highway? Are they still going to use that as another campus, or are they moving into this one?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Owen. At this stage, the site on Princess Highway, the current site, will be vacated, and we have no firm plans at this point in time for a new tenant, but that will be something for future consideration.
Thank you for that response, and no doubt that we'll have another conversation in the future with maybe other groups, but we'll come to that when we get there. So thank you, and I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. A good question, Councillor Owen. Any other councillors to speak on this item? I'll move to sum up. Councillor Shilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Wilmot and Councillor Owen again for your words in support of this project. Look, at the end of the day, this is providing an important service to the community. It's all about building capacity in our local communities, and if we build capacity in our local communities, there's less need for reactive government services. By providing people with accessible, quality, cheap vocational training that can be used lifelong, that's the outcome that we want, because we know that people, once they've achieved the qualification or they've had some type of post-secondary school or whatever exit point they may have left, we know that they have better life outcomes, and that's, as a local government, what we want to see. We want to see our community happy, we want to see them thriving, and we want to see them well connected with the community. And look, as I said previously, everything about this site, everything about this proposal ticks all of those boxes. So look, once again, I just hope that we get support for it tonight, and that moving forward we can see some great outcomes coming from this site, which was previously destined for demolition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shilling. Before I go for the vote, I'd just like to make a comment, and can I have a question to General Manager of Assets and Services, Mr. Ellis? About this particular building, Mr. Ellis, there is some demolition going to happen on this building, just to make it clear to the gallery and to the community that the change rooms and the grandstand, the old grandstand of the football grounds, I know that were occupied by CPAC, which is the Cardinia Players and Actors Corp. They use it as a change room and a rehearsal space. What is happening to that? Is the whole building going to go, or is it half, or what is the actual circumstance, Mr. Ellis, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're correct in saying that there will be some demolition works, and that will really remove the old change rooms and the grandstand. So the Lions Den component, which most people would remember was the bistro area, that's the area that will be refurbished and occupied. The demolition of the old change rooms will occur immediately after the demolition of the old council reserve, which is adjacent to that services central area. So that will then enable the old change rooms to be reverted to a nice green open space complementary to the other passive recreation reserve area.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. It's nice to hear that. A great result when we see that come to fruition. Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those for the item? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Brown, I've elected to allow the gentleman in the Shire offices to take their jackets off if you prefer, because it's very warm in here and it might be getting a bit heated. We don't want a heated argument. We want to have it nice and cool in here. That's what we want to do. So I thought if you'd like to remove your jacket if you want, it might be more comfortable for you. Okay. Okay, item 5, the Almond Trelaw Master Plan, withdrawn by Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council endorse the Almond Trelaw Master Plan and the implementation of the associated capital works projects.
Can I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Councillor Wilmot to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. This Almond Trelaw Reserve is right in the heart of Cockatoo, and it's a very well used space, and it has multiple uses, great number of uses. Primarily the main usages are for walking. There's a number of walking tracks around the reserve, but there's also the off-leash dog area, which is extremely popular, and certainly in the policy development a few months ago of the off-leash dog areas, it was I think the second highest dog off-leash area within the Shire, so very popular space for dog owners to be down there exercising their animals. But it's also got the skate bowl, it's got a number of community buildings on there. The market uses different sections. They use the hall and the car park for most of their markets, but they hold twilight markets twice a year where they come down onto the main rec reserve and use that. We did have a master plan that was developed right back in about 2003, and I've been around in the community long enough to remember that development, and I've just got to say that the consultation that we now do on these master plans is vastly different to what we did back then. Back then we had a committee of the main users of the reserve, so the bowls club, tennis club, kindergarten, all of those people came forward and formed a committee and made the decisions. Now we open it up and we do all sorts of wonderful things like online surveys, and we have staff that go to the market and set up tables where kids can provide feedback on what they want to see in their reserves, and it's incredible what we can now do, and it involves much more of the community. And certainly in the initial development of the draft, we had the online survey had 88 responses. Then when the draft was put out, we had another survey and we had 152 responses to that survey, plus then the people that participated in other meetings like the Cockatoo Township Committee meetings and at the markets and so forth. So we touch base with a heck of a lot more of the community now than what we did 15 years ago, which is a really good thing. And I guess that's where technology has taken us. Back 15 years ago, you didn't do online surveys. It just didn't happen. So that's where technology's come into play. But the master plan needed to be reviewed. It needed to be updated. With the community's been asking for it for a lot of years, and we've now done that. And it partly was brought about by the big budget brainstorm that we did back in 2015, where it was identified that there was a need for some more community facilities, particularly around barbecues on the reserve. And that started really the balls rolling on this revamp of the master plan as to where the best position to put those said barbecues would be. Of course, we've also had a new playground put in during the whole process of this consultation and development, and that playground has been a huge success. It's been so well appreciated, and just about any day, regardless of whether you can go down there, and there'll be at least one family using that playground, which is wonderful to see because the old playground wasn't that well utilised. But there's lots of recommendations here. There's BMX facility is one of the first things that will happen on this site once we've adopted this plan. Again, there's been a community group advocating for a BMX facility for a lot of years. The draft had it in a different position. They had it more up near where the skate bowl currently is. The master plan listened to the concerns, listened to the suggestions of the public, and they've moved it, and it's now down into the far end of the reserve, which is down past the dog off-leash area, and it probably provides with a bit more space, but it also means that there's other things that can happen up where it was originally proposed. The dog off-leash area will have an upgrade of their facilities as part of our policy on the dog off-leash areas. It's going to be upgraded. It'll be fully fenced area, and it'll have agility type equipment for dogs and their owners to use. But because that area in there often gets used for different events like circuses and so forth, all of that equipment is going to be temporary, movable equipment. So it'll be secured in the ground when it's being used for the dogs in the dog off-leash area, but if a circus or something is coming in, it'll be able to be unbolted and moved for that occasion and then brought back and reinstalled. So that's great, because it does mean that people like the circus groups can still come to our community. There's no other flat area in the hills where it's big enough for a circus to set up and then still have car parking, etc. So really important that we've been able to keep that space usable for a multitude of uses, but also have it used as the dog off-leash area. It's proposed that we redo the toilets at the end of the Scout building, which is the Alan Bailey Hall. Now, these toilets are very old and they are falling apart, and currently they're not open to the public. There is a door from the outside that you could use them, and we do it at different community events. We do use those toilets, but they are old. They need some work done desperately. So this proposal is that they will become public toilets, which are open 24/7. So that'll be a good outcome for both the Scouts and the public. Certainly it'll be a lot closer to the new playground that's been installed, and that's important. Parents with young children need to have ready access to toilets, and currently where the toilets are is away from the playground and too far to run in a hurry. But the current toilets are earmarked to be demolished in this plan. I'm certainly hoping that is right at the rear end of this plan, because at the moment those toilets are still very much used. Now that the trail goes straight past those toilets, every time I'm at Orbeck doing a shift, I see people stopping there to use that are walking on the trail, because they are noticeable. There is a new set of toilets being put in the main street, again where the path goes by, but they're not so noticeable. So it's going to really be important that we put good signage around the place, particularly once we do start to talk about demolishing these toilets, if we do. It'll be very important to direct traffic as well. There's a lot of people that pull in down here with their caravans. There's an incredible amount of tourists that drive down the it's called Hillsville Cooey Rupp Road, that go directly past this corner, and they stop here at these toilet blocks because they can see them from the road. They pull in, they've got plenty of room with their caravans to turn around. If we move them to another spot that isn't visible from the roadside, it will be very, very important that we have very clear signage to direct people to where they're going. But overall, I think we've listened to the community, we've heard what they've thought about the draft plan, we heard from them when we developed the draft plan, we've now heard from them and changed some of the things that we were suggesting, and I think we've met most of the community's feedback, which is great. And as I say, there is money allocated in this year's budget to do the BMX facility, so that'll happen sometime within the next few months, hopefully, and that'll be a great outcome for that group that's been advocating for that for so long. So I'm hoping that we'll get your support tonight, and I look forward to seeing this implemented over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Second to speak, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to my colleague here, Councillor Wilmot. She's covered most of the bases, but I will just reiterate and say it's a fantastic facility, this open space recreation reserve. It's quite huge compared to the township, right in the heart of town. Always has been well utilised, and once we start implementing the master plan and the structures that come with it, it's going to be even more well utilised. As Councillor Wilmot spoke to, it's going to be a it's going to be a regional off-leash dog park area, so it's recognised that people from more than just our municipality will come to use it because of its great facility that it is. Many of us know that they've been advocating for BMX track for the kids and such. I'm sure there's a few adults that'll use it too out there for many years now. So it's a great outcome that we're going to be able to deliver this. There is $350,000 allocated in this current budget for the BMX facility and the upgrade to the skate park. So I look forward to seeing this happening in the near future, and giving the kids and the big kids out there even more reason to be outdoors and enjoying life in Cockatoo. So thank you to my fellow councillors, and I'll pass it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Any other speakers on this matter? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my ward colleagues. I'm going to repeat you guys, but I think some of the points that you made around the BMX, a strong advocacy campaign by a group of residents in Cockatoo. So I congratulate them. We got emails definitely almost on a weekly basis about this. So well done to that advocacy group. Also the barbecues you raised, Councillor Wilmot, that was definitely a theme in the big budget brainstorm a few years ago, and I think that did make the top 10. I think it was number 2. Amazing. So to achieve that and get that completed as part of this, I think that's a really good thing. We do need upgraded toilets, accessible and inclusive toilets in Cockatoo. So I'm really pleased that there will be an upgrade to the Allen Bailey Hall toilets. I also support Councillor Wilmot's comments about the current older toilets in Bailey Road. They are well utilised, and I think we just probably need to have further conversations about that before they are demolished. And yeah, I totally support this plan, and thanks everyone who put in their submission, and also the officers. I know they've done a great job. As Councillor Wilmot did say, is that we're doing things differently in relation to how we go about these master plans and attend markets and have pictures where young people can put dots on things that they like and don't like. And I think that's a great way. We go to kindergartens and tell them, what do you want to see in these sorts of places? So I think we're doing much better in this space. So I look forward to the development of our Montreal Reserve as per this master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other speakers on this item? I'll refer back to the mover to sum up. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I've got much more to say. I think I've said quite enough, but I do thank my ward colleagues for their support on this. They've been part of this process as well for the last 18 months or so, so I know that they're fully supportive of the community and what the community want to see happen on their rec reserve. So hopefully we'll have the support of the other councillors, not that there's many here tonight, and this master plan will be adopted and then implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. There are enough councillors here, and it's a really great thing to see and hear the community consultation program that's been ramped up, and it's great to see the 3 ward councillors working together on this fantastic project, because I know up at Cockatoo they've been wanting this master plan upgrade for a long time. So it's really great to see it here tonight being put forward. So all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item number 6. O'Neill Road Recreation Reserve Master Plan, another master plan tonight, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternate notice of motion with a slight amendment. So I move, as per the recommendation, to endorse the O'Neill Road Recreation Reserve Master Plan, subject to the inclusion of a second set of AFL goalposts being considered in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Springfield. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Long history, this reserve. So, in short history, back in October 2017, Council resolved to immediately commence a master plan for the O'Neill Road Reserve. So that brings us to where we are. But the reserve has a long history. It was part of that. The reserve started when it was a small allocation of open space for a new estate in Beaconsfield in the early 2000s. Back in roughly 2007, there was a real need for additional recreation spaces in Beaconsfield because of Home Park Reserve wasn't built yet. Perth Allison was at capacity, so council thought we got to do something here. So we obviously upgraded the reserve as much as we could, and that sort of brings us to where we are now. So back in July 2018, council went on a 4-week consultation public exhibition period with a draft master plan, and we did receive 79 submissions. Some of them were written submissions, some were online, surveys, etc. This master plan was formed with some background documents. The Growth Corridor Sports Strategy, which was developed in 2005, and also the Beaconsfield and Upper Beaconsfield Sports Facility Plan and Home Park Road Reserve Master Plan in 2008. So as part of this, I would like to see, when we've got the opportunity to do so, some of these plans updated, because they are getting old, and for us to be making assumptions at this current time, I think that is a bit risky. So hopefully in the near future we do upgrade some of those policies, particularly the Growth Corridor Sports Strategy, which was developed in 2005. So we did receive 79 submissions, and some of the concerns and the themes are summarised with the following. The landscaping, footpaths and shade were of most important to majority of respondents. There are a number of concerns relating to the intersection and roadways surrounding the reserve, which don't directly relate to the master plan. Council officers will provide the feedback to the infrastructure services team, who will review the feedback and send it to Vic Roads, who is the responsible for delivering that intersection. There was a concern that the draft master plan didn't include AFL goalposts. There was car parking restrictions and location of proposed car park concerns, and there was supportive and positive responses to landscape improvements such as the new barbecue area and paths. So as part of that consultation and that feedback, we have made changes to the draft master plan, and there are 11 key areas, and that is master plan amended to include installation of a drinking fountain. Master plan amended to include, this report says 1 set of AFL goals, but in my amended motion I'm seeking for 2 set of AFL goals. Master plan amended to include a low height fence on the playground side. In addition to the community feedback, a number of recommendations were made to the master plan following the internal consultation. That included amended to show the main reserve car park having a full circulation loop. The plan amended to show a new alignment of the northern footpath along Janet Bowman Boulevard, and the amendment to relocate the barbecue and bench seating to a location southeast of the playground and install a connecting path. Amend to include a low height fence on the playground side of the proposed path. Amendment to include reference to improve subsurface drainage. Also to improve the subsurface drainage in the area south of the basketball half court, and amendment for a connected path to the intersection of O'Neill Road, and amended to a reference to a future intersection of O'Neill Road and the Old Princess Highway works. So there was strong support for obviously the existing playground, and that playground was installed by council about 12 months ago, and it's just fantastic to, every time I go past there, to see how well utilised that playground is. The other day I saw the Beaconsfield kindergarten students there, the whole 2 classes using that, and I think this plan does earmark a future change room facility or a very small pavilion. We're not seeking anything huge. It is a smaller reserve, but this reserve has been active for the last 10 years and mainly using builders' portable dunnies as areas to go to the toilet and change, and it's not appropriate. These reserves are highly utilised. they're probably not utilised as much as they could be because of that factor of having a portable dunny that's just there and relocated and, you know, emptied every so forth. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing as well. I think we just got to have an open mind. I know the strategy back in 2005 earmarked that as soccer, and we know we need rectangular type surfaces in Beaconsfield and covering up a Beaconsfield and officer, but I think we need an open mind so we have a very flexible playing space for the needs of the community at a particular time. So when we do resurface this ground, that we have that open mind, and that's my sort of reasoning to at least consider a second set of AFL goalposts. So this, if it is adopted tonight, this will go in the many sort of items for consideration for future budgets. And as one of the ward councillors, this is a priority for me. Having this reserve with portable toilets for over 10 years is probably not acceptable. And with the growing area of Beaconsfield and obviously our neighbouring officer, I think it's important. We know Home Park Reserve is at capacity. We know that Upper Beaconsfield is limited in using Home Park, and they now, Upper Beaconsfield clubs are now using O'Neill Road Reserve to play cricket. So I think that demonstrates that these upgrades are required now and should be, hopefully funded in future budgets. And council will seek external grants to help fulfil these items listed in this plan. So thank you to the community who provided their feedback and responses. Thank you to the staff who helped develop this, and hopefully it gets support to be adopted tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan. The second to speak, Councillor Springfield, and good luck.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen. I support his amended motion for tonight. I won't add too much more to his impassioned speech on O'Neill Road, but it is a smaller rec reserve, as you pointed out, but strategically placed. When you drive past there, there's so many houses and built form that's come around that reserve in the last 10 years or such. So it is well utilised. I see that when I go past there, and as he stated, once we implement some of these actions from the master plan, I'm sure it'll be even more utilised by the community that's right on its doorstep. So I look forward to seeing this is the first step towards, putting the structure plan in, putting the master plan in for the idea of how we're going to build the form. The next step is finding the funds and taking those steps towards building it. But first steps come first, so I fully support this first step. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Any other speakers to speak on this item? Mover to sum up. Councillor Rowan.
No, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. It is a well-utilised reserve. Desperate need of improved facilities. This master plan does identify what is proposed, and that will go in the mix for future budget deliberations in the future, and I welcome that. So I move so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe it's a boutique reserve, maybe not small, but a boutique one, and it's very recognisable, that reserve. One of our most recognised reserves, I think, in our Shire, but it's so close to the road, so it's really great to see it being utilised and master planned up in this manner. So I'll ask for all those in favour. Carried. We have a new item tonight, item 8. It's the petition for 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham. It's withdrawn by Councillor Michael Shilling. Councillor Shilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to move that the petition for 6 to Main Street, Pakenham is noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Councillor Shilling, to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I won't talk too long on this item. So this was a petition tabled to us from Ms. Gloria O'Connor. in relation to 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham. I'd just like to acknowledge that petition tonight, the 15 pages which councillors all received that petition. It's all circulated in our briefing packs, so I've got it up right in front of me right now. I'd just like to note the petition, but in terms of the outcome, council has endorsed the decision, which the recommendation which the petition was against. But I'd just like to put that on the record that we acknowledge that petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Councillor Springfield, to second speaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I support Councillor Schilling in noting that the petition is noted, but it was moved by council. We supported the motion to lease that for a very worthy cause, and I don't have any hesitation in announcing my support for that still. So, but I note the petition. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I thank the people who signed the petition. I think petitions play a very important role in council decision making. Unfortunately, this petition was lodged, after council made a decision, so we're unable to consider it because a decision has been made. But I note there was numerous signatures. It is a very important part of our decision making, and I encourage residents to continue to communicate with council by this means, sometimes for the relevant matters and issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other speakers on this subject? Back to Councillor Schilling to sum up, if you prefer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owens, Councillor Springfield, for your words on that. And look, and I echo the same sentiment as Councillor Owen, that as a council, I think petitions are important. So too is respectful communications to councillors regarding issues in the community. At the end of the day, we are elected by the people. Therefore, community are well and truly entitled, and I encourage as well, if people have concerns over developments, whether you see it on our planning agendas or our general council meeting agendas, please do get in touch with your local councillor. And if it's an issue you feel strongly about, I think petitions are a great way of showing council a particular community sentiment as well. So I support that, and once again, I was moving this tonight just to say that the petition was noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling, and I want to thank you for withdrawing this particular item. I think it's important that it gets acknowledgement from us as councillors that that these things are, with the passion and the emotion that comes with some of these items has been acknowledged at our council table. But I'll ask for all those for. Carried. Item number 9. Contract 18/26 Garfield Sports Lighting Upgrade and Contracts 18/27 the Gembrook Sports Lighting Upgrade, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following. The tender submitted by Comlex Services to undertake the works associated with the Contract 18/26 Garfield Sports Lighting Upgrade and Contract 18/27 Gembrook Sports Lighting Upgrade be accepted for the contract sum of $580,000 excluding GST, and the remaining tenderers be advised accordingly, and the common seal of the council be affixed to the contract documents.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Could I have a seconder for this item, please? Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Back to Councillor Owen, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Gembrook and Garfield oval lighting is of very poor quality, and it does not meet the standards. And there are real strict standards in relation to lighting, because it can put council at risk and clubs at risk if it does not meet the standards. So the new lighting will be highly efficient LED lighting, which will meet the Australian standards for training purposes at night. So this report provides consideration for the appointment of a qualified contractor to undertake the construction works at these 2 locations. We received 2 tenders, and we have decided and the tenderer, Comlex Services, is the most advantageous to council. So this item is adopting that recommendation. I do look forward to these works happening. It's happening at 2 locations, and I think it's really good that we sort of do these tenders together, not doing, you know, Gembrook and for one tender and then Garfield for another. So bringing those 2 items together, I think is good business, and hopefully we've seen some financial benefits or savings as part of that. So I'm sure all the clubs associated with these 2 reserves will be extremely happy. We know we've got a commitment on this council to improve Gembrook, obviously with the pavilion that is, I think, in this budget, and will be developed in the near future. So a good thing, and obviously Garfield, they will appreciate it, no doubt. So I'll move to my seconder to say some words. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Yes, I'll ask Councillor Ray Brown as the seconder to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm all for this lighting for sports ground. As most people would probably be aware, I'm quite a sports nut. I've visited Garfield a few times, and the lighting there is absolutely disgraceful, and they should not be training under those particular lights, given the health and safety conditions. Garfield, in my opinion, is probably the best surface in the whole of West Gippsland for a playing surface, and I think the lights will complement that. I'd like to compliment the officers for combining the 2 contracts together, because obviously you should get a cheaper deal if you do those types of things, and it's good to see that the contractor has a history of providing similar works. We have had occasions where the lighting has not been quite satisfactory and had to go and follow up the work. So I congratulate the officers and also the people who were advocating for this, because I think the lighting is very important, particularly for football and also for cricket, and I'm sure that Garfield will appreciate this no end. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any other speakers on this subject? No other speakers. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown. And I do want to acknowledge that Council has received a grant, a state government grant, country football and netball program of $100,000 towards this price. So thank you to the state government or that program who assisted council. That is very important. We can't achieve the things we want to do without outside external government funding. So I move so, and hope all councillors support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. All those in favour? Carried. Item number 10, contract 18/09, resurfacing of various roads, withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the alternate motion that I have listed in the paperwork as per the officer's recommendation, subject to the addition of a new point 2 to read. 2, that previous resurfacing works undertaken under contract 17/28 that require attention be rectified to council satisfaction prior to any works commencing under this contract 18/09. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Could I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Jeff Springfield. Back to Councillor Owen to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Springfield. I just want to read out the officer's recommendation, which I've added to. So the recommendation is that the tender submitted by QR Construction, Gippsland, to undertake the works associated with the contract 18/09 road resurfacing of various roads within the Cardinia Shire Council be accepted for the contract sum of $667,516.48, excluding GST. The remaining tenderers be advised accordingly, and the common seal of the council be affixed to the contract document. So that's the original motion, the officer's recommendation, and I've just added a point 2, which is that the previous resurfacing works undertaken under contract 17/28 that require attention be rectified to council satisfaction prior to any works commencing under this contract. So the reason I've moved this amendment, because I have real concerns regarding the preferred contractor in this item's recent resurfacing work as part of the 17-18 program. And I've sort of distributed photos to councillors and officers, and this relates to some work in Beaconsfield over the last 6 months. And personally, I've received numerous complaints from neighbours, residents, community members. I've observed Facebook messages of people's dissatisfaction of these works, and these are the roads around Fieldstone, Coronel, Scenic Drive, Panorama, and Janet Bowman. I've asked today to find out how many sort of customer complaints we've received about this same item, and I was surprised that I only learned that we only had 7. I would have thought there would have been a lot more, but people tend to complain via Facebook, and unfortunately don't sort of go to that extra step and sort of contact council. But I know I've witnessed that there's serious issues with that work, and I've been advised by Mr. Mike Ellis that before we accept this current tender for this item, that those items, those outstanding unsatisfactory works involving this contractor will be rectified in Beaconsfield at their cost. So I think that is important to really take note of previous work, rectify that and improve going forward. As part of this contract, 55 roads will be resurfaced. Resurfacing existing sealed roads are important. You need to protect the asset. You can't let the asset break down. But when you see work like this, you sort of question, and residents, fair enough, question that and say, look, why is good ratepayers' money, dollars, being spent, and that's the outcome we get? Why don't you use that money in sealing some unsealed roads? That's an argument that a lot of people say. So we've got to get this program right. We've got to make sure that the contractor does appropriate and work up to standard. So thank you to the officers to assist me in drafting this motion, because I had real concerns if we were going to adopt this tender tonight. So I've been reassured that those issues in Beaconsfield will be rectified in the coming months at that contractor's cost, and that is a good thing. So thank you, Mayor. I will go to my seconder to speak.
Seconder to speak, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, ma'am. I have nothing further to add. It's well summarised by Councillor Owen, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors to speak on this item? I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Owen, to sum up. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. As I said, resurfacing programs are important. I think we need to probably better explain why we do these resurfacing. As I said, 55 roads or section of roads are going to be complete as part of this next contract. I think we need to explain as a council why we do that, the importance of that, because if we don't do it, the asset will fail and will cost council more money in the future if we don't. I'm pleased that I've got a commitment as part of this sort of motion tonight that the issues in Beaconsfield will be rectified, and I encourage residents, if you're not happy with anything of council services, please submit it via the customer service channels, and don't rely on social media to address concerns. And I've just happened to look today and I saw many posts about this issue, so it's quite relevant, and I'm hoping that we'll resolve that very soon. So I move to support this tender for the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for your comments and your diligence in this item. It's the old Facebook complaints line strikes again, so that happens a lot. I'll ask Everlays for this item. 4? Carried. Next item, item 16. Major projects and strategies activity report withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen again. Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the report be noted.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder for this item? Councillor Michael Schilling. Back to Councillor Owen, the mover.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a really good report, and I encourage all residents to peruse this item every month. It's a really good report. Provides a really good summary of current works and where they sit in its sort of lifetime of planned, building, etc. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions, if that's all right, or just note a couple of things. Officer Rec Reserve number 2 oval, or the Western Oval, is under construction, and we see some really active works in that space. So I'm really pleased we're finally resurfacing that older playing surface. I had some concerns, and I've relayed that to officers about the proposed length of this oval. The clubs are really hoping to achieve the 150 metre from fence to fence. So I believe the officers are working with the club to hopefully try and achieve that. I know it's a very tight site, and yeah, if an officer want to make any comment on that, I'm happy to. But I know that discussions are underway, and I do acknowledge it is a very tight site, so we've got to keep that in mind. Just the Lang Lang Community and Recreation Precinct in Lang Lang Holdermead just had a really interesting call the other day from the Human Powered Vehicle group in Cardinia Shire. And I never thought of this, and they are wanting to use this reserve to facilitate their meetings. Human-powered vehicles. A lot of our primary school students across our shire are heavily involved in human-powered vehicles, and they are seeking for an area to ride, race, whatever. And they've got really strict requirements, as you know, they prefer no speed humps and all this sort of stuff. So I thought that was a really good opening, and I'm hoping, and I understand they've been liaising with council officers, because if we are able to achieve another use for this precinct, I think that is a great outcome. Thank you. I don't know, it might have been covered already through the ward councillors' consultations, but this came to me, and I thought that is great. So I know they're talking with officers, and if this could be another use for this great facility, I think that is a big tick. So I welcome other councillors' comments to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Michael Schilling, first to speak as a seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree, it's a great report. Quite often it's hard to always be on the front foot and be informing residents of some of the great projects which are awaiting them or are in completion across the Shire. So it is an easy to understand report which summarises it. When councillors get the individual reports, it can sometimes be a good 50 to 100 pages worth of briefing on each project, but this actually puts those 20 or so projects into quite an easy to understand, summarised form. There's just 4 things I want to really quickly touch on. The first one is the Pakenham Hall solar upgrade. We know that council have an aspirational energy target of being carbon neutral by 2024, with the community emissions reduced by 36% by that same time. So the solar upgrade to the Pakenham Hall and Library, which is an 84 kilowatt system, has now been complete, which is very exciting, and it's just awaiting now AusNet approval. Projects like this are quite hard to see, obviously, because the panels are located on the roof, but it's actually an incredibly important piece of infrastructure that we are putting across the Shire. And although not on the report, but on the same issue of sustainability, Councillor Moore and I were lucky enough to, Mayor and I were lucky enough to drive around in an electric car today up Siding Avenue, which was another exciting sustainability project which Council is looking into. Another smaller project, but incredibly important for our community, is the crossing at Station Street. The design works are now complete, which is great to see, and that will cross Burke Park over to the other side of Station Street, which I've had quite a lot of calls, emails and community meetings about this from some local advocacy groups, particularly around those people with disabilities who, how else do you get from the train station to the other side of the main street? it seems a bit ridiculous that it's 2018 and we're just doing it, but still it's better late than never, and I know the community are going to be really happy to see that happen. Council have also completed an updated biodiversity plan, which should come to Council by June 2019, which should pave the way to, once again, it's all about managing growth and sustainability at the same time. So this plan, I've got no doubt, personally, I'll use it as a strong reference document in future council decisions. I have to touch on Deep Creek Reserve, although I know technically it's in Port Ward, as I'm reminded from time to time. I still see a great lot of benefit Shire-wide in that, and great work is happening there. An update on the plant nursery. We've had the initial concept of that now signed off by the stakeholders, and tender documentation is being prepared. If you have a chance to go down there, you'll see it's just amazing how quickly it's all coming together. And it felt like when we first approved the first lot of tenders that it would take years, it felt like, until we would see anything, but it's just flown. So if anyone would like to go out and have a look, it's well worth seeing that progress. That's all I'd like to withdraw from the report, but I would encourage people. It gives a good update as to what's happening in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Any other speakers? Any other councillors would like to speak on items in this package? Nope. Councillor Owen, to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I just forgot to mention the Eastern Dandenong Ranges Trail, which the three Ranges Ward councillors and the Mayor, I don't know if there was any others, attended. That was the Mayor at the time. Yeah, former Mayor, sorry. The official opening was held on the 30th of October. It was a really good celebration of this trail. It is not quite finished, and as the report does say, Council has commenced design and documentation of wayfinding and emergency signage along the trail. We are liaising with the Eastern Dandenong Ranges Association in progressing the signage. It's a very important part of that project. Also, the emergency signage. Over the years, I've had members of emergency services expressing the real sort of need for like number markings of, particularly sections of the trail. So if an emergency does happen, someone has a medical issue or something, you can sort of easily hopefully identify where you are on the trail. It's a long trail. So if you're at point 18 and this emergency is happening there, that really helps emergency services. So we're working on that in relation to signage, and I think that's a really good thing. So thank you, and I move that the report be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I just would like to say the HP vehicles, the home-empowered vehicles, is one of my specialties because at Beacon Hills College, all those years ago, I built the first guy to be in that race, and that's a thing close to my heart. So I'll follow that through to, of course, at the reserve at Lang Lang. It'll be fantastic to have that there. Another user group would be great. Okay, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors, for your input in this tonight. That concludes discussion on the items withdrawn. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendation of the balance of the items listed? Councillor Michael Schilling to move. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. All those in favour? Carried. Next, we have reports or minutes of committees. I note that several reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of the recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillor wishes to view them. Councillor reports. Councillor, any councillors, any matters to report? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week I attended the meeting with the Western Port Biosphere Group, which is a UNESCO branded organisation, one of the 6 in the world, so we're quite unique in that regard. The ongoing funding which Council provides a fifth of, because there's 5 councils involved, we have now got a new executive officer which we had a lot of trouble getting, an executive officer. And funding is an issue, ongoing funding for projects. They have a real issue with identification in respect of their brand. And I was wondering, and perhaps I'll bring it to council later, is there any way that we can put it on some of our documentation that we support the UNESCO Western Port biosphere? It's very important as far as the environment goes. I intend to speak to the asparagus people to see if they will label their export cases that this asparagus was grown in the Western Port biosphere, a UNESCO project. So I think that we really should get behind these people. They are struggling at the moment, but I think with the appointment of the new executive officer, it looks pretty good going on from here. So thank you, Mayor. I'll have to report.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll look into that item. I'd be quite interested myself as well to look into that for you, Councillor Brown. Any other councillor matters or reports? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention that on Saturday we held our very first multicultural forum. This was a project put on by our Cold Advisory Committee. It's the first time we've done this, where we've invited our residents from culturally diverse communities to come to us and have the opportunity to tell us about their experiences. So we posed 4 questions to them. We asked them what has been good or positive about being a resident in Cardinia, what the challenges are living here in Cardinia, do they feel connected to the Cardinia community, and if yes, how, and if not, why not? Would you like to be connected? And fourthly, what are the things that could create a better experience of living in Cardinia? So it was a great day. We got some fantastic feedback. We broke into 3 different working groups. It was a fully facilitated event by a group called Group Work Institute. They did a sensational job of keeping everybody on track and making sure that all voices were being heard, not just the more outspoken, but even the quieter people that are a bit more reserved also were encouraged to put forward their ideas and thoughts. And we'll wait now for them to put together the report, which will then come back, and I'm sure Council will be presented with that report. But it will go on to form our new cultural diversity plan that the staff will be working on. But I wanted to make mention that Councillor Shilling was there, of course, as a member of the Cold Advisory Group, but Councillor Ray Brown and Councillor Colin Ross were also there for the day, and I thank them for their support in this. Also, I'd like to mention that the CEO popped in for a while and came in and saw what was happening, so thank you again for your support. It's very important that we listen to these residents. Our cultural diverse communities are just establishing here, and we've got the opportunity to get things right from the beginning rather than waiting for issues to become huge. We can address anything that, we have this opportunity now to work with these people and make sure their experience is a good experience, that they are fully connected and engaged in this community. And I think that'll divert a lot of the problems that other areas have currently got. Once the problems become massive, it's a lot harder to deal with them and find solutions. So this is just the first project that this group, our advisory group, has put forward. We'll re-establish next year. We've got a debriefing meeting this Wednesday night. Next year we'll have some other projects that we've started talking about, but we'll fully develop them coming into the next year. So watch this space. This is a great committee. We've got some really good, enthusiastic people on there, and I'm sure that we'll do some great things over the next 12 to 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot, and I want to thank you for being there and the other councillors that were there on the day. The Deputy Mayor did represent me on the day on Saturday, but I believe that you spoke, Councillor Wilmot, as the representative on that subcommittee, and I want to thank you for your words. I hear they were fantastic, so good feedback. Yes, any other councillors would like to speak? Yes, you can, Councillor.
Sorry. I thought it was outstanding. The input from the people there, which you would have expected, I did expect when I went there, that would be of a nature of poor us and criticism of things around the place that are impacting on them, etc., etc. But most of the comments were positive. They wanted to contribute. They see a light at the end of the tunnel in respect of the integration type process. And I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Wilmot on the way that she ran that show, and also the facilitators that did not smother discussion. They encouraged it, and it was very, very well done. So thank you, Mayor.
Well spoken, Councillor Brown. I'm really sorry that I missed that, because it sounded like a great day. Any other councillors like to speak on councillor reports? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to provide an update in relation to the Motorsports Steering Committee. So the Motorsports Club Steering Committee has been formed, consisting of representatives from Pakenham Auto Club and Kiriurup and District Motorcycle Club, councillors and council staff. The committee have met twice to commence planning for a permanent accommodation of our two local clubs on lots 1 and 2 at the McGregor Road site. The clubs have produced specific details of their individual requirements to allow planning to commence and draft leases to be prepared. This information will also assist in discussions with both Melbourne Water and SP AusNet in regard to the use of the land under the power lines easement and the Toomuck Creek Reserve by the Motorcycle Club in particular. It is pleasing to note that Council has already been successful in that SP AusNet have reduced the restrictions regarding activities under the power lines, which will greatly assist the motor club activities. At this stage, the committee is waiting on further advice from both clubs regarding track layouts and other requirements. And once this information is received, further meetings will be held. So I just want to update that things are really positive in this space. Council is engaging with our two local clubs. That's moving along, and after a long time, we're finally seeing some movement in that space in providing our two local clubs a permanent home. I just want to thank the council officers involved. I know particularly Mr Mike Ellis and Mr Doug Evans have been heavily involved in that process, and I appreciate it. Also, I wanted to note a couple of activities. Obviously, Remembrance Day was a huge day in our community, and I know councillors represented their communities at several events. Unfortunately, we couldn't be everywhere. Rangers Ward councillors covered as many events that we could, but we still missed on some. But I attended Officer. It was a great service, and I assisted in the launching of this book. We will remember them, the Officer Roll of Honour. So it's got the stories of those soldiers who lost their lives in World War I, commemorating the centenary of Armistice, 11th of November 2018. So this book is a great read. Also, on that week following, before Remembrance Day, the Gazette released a really good sort of lift out. The Guns Fell Silent, Armistice Day Centenary Special Edition. So I congratulate the Gazette on that. And I know there was a number of other books launched around. I know there was one in Pakenham. So I just want to thank those community members and groups that commemorated that 100 years of armistice. In the last month, Rangers Ward councillors attended a Cardinia Deer Management Coalition meeting in Upper Beaconsfield, and we all know that deer is causing a real problem across our Shire, and it was great for us to get our understanding of the work that they're doing in this space, and main issues are disposal of dead carcasses of deer. So I know that they're trying to work with council to try and resolve that issue because if you can't get rid of the deer, it's a real problem because there are strict conditions about the carcass removal. So they've put a couple of requests to council, and we're working through those. A number of councillors attended the Diwali event, which is the celebration, what is it, Councillor Michael? Celebration of lights in the Indian community. It was just fantastic. That was at Gunfire World, and that was really good. I had the pleasure of speaking to grade 4 students at John Henry Primary School about local government, and it was a really good opportunity to speak to young people about the role of council. And they had a really good understanding, the students, a really good understanding of the role of local government, so it was a pleasure. And I know all councillors are available to speak if the request comes, so it was a really good opportunity. Late last month, I think it was, councillors attended the Emerald and District Rotary Public Speaking event. All ranges ward councillors attended, and some grade 5 and 6 students, they go in a competition, and they spoke really well. And a young boy from Cockatoo, he was amazing, and he won that competition. But well done to that group. And I think that sums me up, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Any other reports from councillors? Well, I'll finish on a note. I'd like to note that last Thursday was on a sad day in our community. A local stalwart called Ray Coombs from Narnagoon. His funeral was the last Thursday, which is a pretty sad occasion. A wonderful tribute, I must say, at the Cardinia Cultural Centre. It was the real down-to-earth, back-to-Narnagoon type funeral for this man that deserved it, and he passed away on the reserve that he loved. So it was really good. My wife Sue and I went to the funeral of Ray Coombs, and who we sadly missed in our community. Of course, he was the Stan Henwood Award winner of 2017, and so he's a very close-knit group of people and their family. I send our sympathies from us councillors to his family and connections. Okay, that's all, councillors. Now we're going to move on to, have we got any petitions? Presentation of petitions tonight? No presentations, Mr. Evans? We'll move to community question time. We have received a series of 6 questions from Gloria O'Connor. And I acknowledge that Ms. O'Connor is in presence in the gallery. Welcome, Ms. O'Connor. I refer your first question to Andrew Paxton, the General Manager of Planning and Development, to read the question and answer. Mr. Paxton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Gloria, for your question. The first question reads, why was no information forwarded to Berwick Pakenham Historical Society advising that the proposed building of 10 houses and an office on the land at 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham, adjoining the Sid L Reserve, former Shire office building and car park? Council report states, notice of the application has been given by sending notices to the owners and occupiers of the adjoining land. Ms. O'Connor, in response, is it recognised that the land, Sid L Reserve, is owned by Council. Under Section 52 of the Act, the Society is not a recommending or determining referral authority. Therefore, referral is not required. Through the pre-application process, officers required the applicant to amend their plans to ensure the setback was allowed between the first unit and the abutting reserve and the historic building. This ensured there was a significant gap to allow the planting to soften any impact of the unit against the reserve and to allow appropriate sight lines from the front of the property to the reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. I refer your next 2 questions to Kristen Jackson, the Acting General Manager of Community Wellbeing, to read and answer. Ms. Jackson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. O'Connor, for your questions. Question number 2 was on 1st of October at a special council meeting about the land at 6 to 10 Main Street. It was stated that a favourable decision must urgently be made by council in order to receive promised funding. From whom was the promised money received and what was the amount? Where is the money at present and how will it be spent? The answer is the construction is being arranged and funded by the Peter and Lindy White Foundation. The exact cost of the development has not been finalised, but it will involve 10 to 3 and 4 bedroom units, 1 office and all landscaping, perimeter fencing, outdoor paths, etc. Question number 3. If and when the planned housing project continues, whose name will be on the title of the dwelling dwellings? Will rates be payable and by whom? And why is council to be financially responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the properties? The dwellings will be managed and operated by WAS, and Windermere will provide the wraparound social services support to tenants. Council is leasing the premises, land and dwellings 2 ways. As the land will remain in Council's ownership, no rates will be payable. Council has accepted the responsibility for ongoing maintenance that is expected to cost in the order of $3,000 per annum. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kristen Jackson. Thank you. Okay, I'll refer your next question again to Andrew Paxton. Mr. Paxton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Gloria, thank you for the question. The question reads, has any action been taken by Council to request state government to set mandatory requirement for each property developer to reserve an agreed section of land in each planned housing development to be available for social housing projects? Ms O'Connor, the response is, on the 1st of June 2018, the state government made changes to the Act by adding a new objective in the Act to facilitate the provisions of affordable housing in Victoria. This change intended to provide a framework that allows for approaches to the delivery of affordable housing. Any approach would need to be voluntary and agreed between the parties and Council, and deliver an affordable housing as part of the development. I note that the government stopped short of making this mandatory, which was a request from a number of councils. The state government, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning officers support Council's position to negotiate 2% of all future housing developments with over 100 lots for social housing, and this is outlined in our draft social housing and affordable housing strategy, which is on exhibition at the moment. So we're having a go at the moment with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for that as an approach, and we'll see where that lands. At the moment, they're all voluntary.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. Finally, Ms O'Connor, I referred your last 2 questions to Jenny Cicluna, the Acting General Manager of Corporate Services. Ms Cicluna, please.
Good evening, Ms O'Connor. Your 5th question was, what is the allocated funding amount for the council room installed cameras and their ongoing maintenance? Council has currently committed to a trial of webcasting of council meetings until June 2019. 2019. This comes at a cost of $1,648 per meeting. The cameras and equipment aren't actually owned by Council. They're provided as part of a contract arrangement for that amount. Your 6th question was, will there be funding allocated to an upgrade of the current Council telephone service? Ms O'Connor, there is no funding directly committed to upgrading the actual telephony system that is used by the customer service officers. However, the customer service team continues to identify process improvements to enhance the experience of customers making phone inquiries with Council. They take on average 500 calls per day and 120,000 calls per year. During the recent peak rate inquiry period, wait times for phone calls were halved and call abandonment rates were reduced from 30% to 2%. Given the continued growth in the community, Council continues to be aware of the need to make information readily available to residents to reduce the need for phone inquiries. There are a number of projects currently being worked on across Council to achieve this objective.
Thank you, Ms Cicluna. Ms O'Connor, if you want to seek any further information regarding these questions, please contact the general managers concerned that have spoken this evening, and I'm glad to see that we shared it around the staff here tonight. And if you would prefer these answers to be given to you in writing, I'm sure that the general managers here are happy to supply that to you when ready. Thank you. Okay, now we have councillor question time. Councillor Brett Owen, you have a question you wish to ask the General Manager of Assets and Services. Councillor Owen, would you ask the question, please, of Mr. Ellis? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The delays to the construction of Kenilworth Avenue in Beaconsfield continues to adversely impact landowners, residents and users of this road. It has been almost 12 months since the construction work ceased. Can you please provide Council with an update on the construction of Kenilworth Avenue in Beaconsfield? What is Council doing to resolve the contractual issues between the developer and the contractor? And what is Council doing to maintain Kenilworth Avenue and reduce the adverse impact on residents and users of the road during this prolonged contractual dispute?
Mr. Ellis, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. In respect to the first two items which relate to the contractual dispute, I've just recently been advised that the deed between the developer who's financing the works and the contractor, that deed is now agreed and in place. The only outstanding issue is in relation to the timelines associated with the revised practical completion. So the original practical completion date was set from when they actually started the works on site. So there's negotiations being undertaken in terms of the modified practical completion date. I'm expecting to get advice in relation to that date later this week. In respect to the ongoing maintenance, Council's been very conscious of, I guess, the poor standard of surface. Basically, the fact that there's no gravel pavement, it's made it very difficult to maintain a good and safe travelling surface, but we've had our teams out grading the road on a very regular basis, and that will continue. And about 2 weeks ago, Council at its expense provided a gravel resheet to ensure that there was adequate material there, so it made the grading more effective. So I guess in summary, by the end of this week, I'm very hopeful that there will be a resolution from the contractual negotiation side, and that we'll have a firm date for the recommencement of works. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Councillor Owen, you also have another question you wish to ask of our new Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Jeffs. Councillor Owen, would you like to ask the question, please?
Thank you, Mayor. And before I do, I just want to thank Mr. Mike Ellis. I know I harass you on a daily basis about this Kenilworth Avenue, but thank you for your work, and I'm hopeful that we see resolution very soon, because I know residents are sick and tired of it. So, and I know you are too, Mr. Ellis. But my question to the CEO is: the many major non-signalised intersections along the Princess Highway between Pakenham and Beaconsfield are under extreme pressure and require signalisation. The intersection of O'Neill Road and Old Princess Highway, Beaconsfield, is already at capacity and has seen large number of vehicle collisions in recent times, including 2 collisions in the past week. Can you please update Council on what is Council doing to bring forward the construction of the O'Neill Road and Old Princess Highway intersection? And also, what is Council doing to try to bring forward the signalisation and upgrade of other non-signalised major intersections between Pakenham and Beaconsfield? Thank you.
Ms. Jeffs, can you answer that, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So Council has progressed to concept design stage for the O'Neill Road intersection, and in fact all 8 of those intersections along the Princess Highway and Old Princess Highway. So that includes Glisman Road, O'Neill, as I mentioned, Brunt, Bayview, Tivendale, McMullen, Thulis Road and Arena Parade. So we've been proactive in getting those concept designs ready. Unfortunately, though, the total cost of those 8 intersections is about $36 million, only half or part of which is covered by our local developer contributions. And so I'd like to reassure the council and community that Cardinia Shire's been advocating very strongly for government funding leading into the state election for this whole package of intersection upgrades. And we will be approaching the new government very shortly after the election to fund the construction of those intersections.
Thank you, Ms. Jess. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the CEO. I know you and your officers are working very heavily on that. This is a real issue for our community. We know, we see it every day. So I just wanted to highlight to the community that we are working on this issue and we're not sitting on our hands. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I really respect your thoughts and concerns for your local community as always. Thank you. Well, that concludes tonight's proceedings. I want to thank you all for your attendance. I want to thank the staff, the general managers here for their hard work and their answers they gave tonight in question time. There's a few firsts here tonight. First answer from our CEO to a question, my first meeting, and I want to thank the gallery for being here to witness tonight's meeting, and I wish you a good night and a safe trip home. Thank you.